It was a year ago today that George Floyd was murdered by former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin, starting a nationwide movement that, unlike others we've seen in the past, had a truly profound impact on the national conversation when it comes to race and other issues. So let's talk about it with our friend Dr. Jason Nichols, senior lecturer in African American Studies at the University of Maryland, who's back up late with me on the Final Five. Good to see you again, Jason.
Always good to see you, Jim.
I was thinking about where we were a year ago, and first of all, how the initial reports of what transpired in Minneapolis were far less damning than what ended up coming out, and obviously everything that ensued. But as you look at where we are now versus where we are a year ago, give me your take about where we stand. Have we really made progress? Have we started to make progress when it comes to race relations? Where do you think we are?
Well, I think that we're having important conversations, but I think for a long time we've had conversations and people need action. And we're looking for some of this policy to get passed, like the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. We need to get rid of qualified immunity, or at least strip it down and make it more fair for the public so that we can have people held accountable when they do something wrong. We also need to move more towards community policing. So there are lots of things that need to happen. As far as our relationships, I'm not so sure that they've gotten better or gotten worse. We haven't actually been out in the public in a long time. You and I were just talking about how it'll be good to get out and
see
you know,
each
one
other.
day I'll actually be out in the studio with you one day. But I will say that some of the conversations I think are still disingenuous. We're talking about critical race theory, which lots of people don't really understand. And we're having all of these conversations about race, and people are demeaning others' views on it. We're seeing a rise in anti-Semitism, a rise in anti-Asian hate. So I'm not so sure that we're in a better place, but I really hope that at the very least, we can start to get some of the policy move forward to at least correct policing and some of the other things that we see on the docket in terms of housing and many other really important issues for people of color.
You mentioned qualified immunity, which is something we've talked about on this show many times, and I had last week Glenn Youngkin, who's the Republican running for governor in Virginia, who spoke out against the push to eliminate qualified immunity. This is something that is really a hot button issue, yet over the last year really just came into focus as something that should at least be looked at. We mentioned community policing, something that I think really we saw some pushes for it in the 80s and 90s, and then it fell by the wayside when funding was low, when they had to cut money, when they had to make some money up somewhere. They got rid of community policing in many cities across the country. So here in D.C., one of the biggest, I would say, you could see it. Black Lives Matter Plaza. Mayor Bowser ordered this big mural on the street, and Black Lives Matter DC said that was just window dressing, that there was really no earnest effort on behalf of DC to make steps in the right direction. Do you believe that a lot of this is just symbolism and not much action?
Well, you know, one of the things that I will say for the political right is that they are correct that there is a lot of virtue signaling. There is a lot of window dressing. There is, hey, we support you, but when you start talking about resources, all of a sudden the conversation changes and people tell you to hold the phone. I think we have things like Leobor in our state, in my state, in Maryland, that really needs to be looked at and honestly stripped down. And you know, I can give you tons of statistics about qualified immunity. For example, in Chicago, $113 million was spent by taxpayers to settle police brutality and excessive force cases. $113 million coming out of the pockets of people in Chicago. That includes the people on the west and south side of Chicago. The impoverished people of that city are paying for excessive force. Then you have, you know, and I hate to pick on Chicago, but, you know, between
they've had problems. Yeah,
they have serious problems. Between 2007 and 2015, the Chicago Independent Police Review Authority investigated 400 shootings by police and deemed only 2 to be unjustified. And that's just not possible. You know, we found that collective bargaining by these unions has led to a rise in violent encounters with police because they are less accountable. We have to hold people accountable. And, you know, one of the things that I've suggested, Jim, and other people like me have suggested, is that instead of taxpayers footing the bill for police brutality, it should come out of police pensions. Because that way, not only will police officers think twice about stepping over the line, other people will be thinking, the other police officers present will be thinking, hey, this affects me, so I'm going to stop you from stepping over the line. Or if I see you and you're having a bad day, and I think that you're under a little bit too much stress and you may be a danger to yourself and others, I'm going to tell you, hey, you need to sit this one out. These are the kinds of things that need to happen in order to make changes with policing. And I'm not so sure that, a lot of the window dressing that we saw from mayors and governors across the country is addressing these issues.
There are people who will say, and Jason, I'm just about out of time, so we'll have to leave it at that.
Right.
But
sorry for running my mouth.
No, that's okay. Because you know what? This is one of those things we cannot solve. We cannot solve in 5 or 6 minutes. But there are people that believe that when you take those steps, that equates to effectively neutering police departments across the country. And I know that's not the intent of it. I grew up in a law enforcement family. I know how it works. I know what it's like to be the family of a police officer, but I also know where things need to be addressed in this country. And I think we've all seen that. But the faces and the names that have come out over the last year, Jason, we're going to remember them. George Floyd, Darnella Frazier, who shot the video that really brought this all into perspective. So much of that coming out. Jason, good to see you as always.
Thank you. Thank you, Jim.
Final 5 back after this.